Hello, my name is Jacob, and I want to share my journey of mastering English. Like many of you, I once struggled with the language, but through persistence, creativity, and the right techniques, I transformed my English skills. This is my story, a personal account of how I went from being afraid to speak to confidently conversing in English every day. This guide is not just about learning English. It's about embracing the process, overcoming fears, and developing a lifelong passion for communication. My journey was filled with moments of doubt, struggles, and small victories that led to a deep appreciation for the language. From my early struggles with pronunciation to eventually holding full conversations without hesitation, every step taught me something valuable. By sharing my experiences, I hope to inspire and equip you with strategies that can make your own journey smoother and more enjoyable. So, let's dive into the details and explore how you too can master English effortlessly. I remember the first time I tried speaking English, I was terrified. My hands were shaking, my mind went blank, and words wouldn't come out right. I hesitated, stammered, and sometimes even avoided situations where I had to speak. The fear of making mistakes was overwhelming, and I felt embarrassed whenever someone corrected me. But then I realized that every expert was once a beginner. I started observing native speakers, listening to their pronunciation, and mimicking their tone. Slowly, I gained the courage to speak up, even if my sentences were not perfect. I made a conscious decision to learn from every mistake rather than be ashamed of it. Looking back, that mindset shift was the turning point in my journey to fluency. The first thing I did was immerse myself in English. I listened to English songs, podcasts, and news broadcasts every single day. Even when I didn't understand everything, I kept listening. The rhythm, tone, and pronunciation became familiar over time. I started by selecting content that genuinely interested me: music from my favorite artists, podcasts about topics I loved, and news channels that kept me updated on current events. This way, learning English didn't feel like a chore, but something I genuinely enjoyed. I also listened to a variety of accents: British, American, Australian, to develop a well-rounded understanding of the language. I made it a habit to write down new words and phrases, then look them up and use them in conversations. Additionally, I would listen to the same podcast episode multiple times to reinforce my comprehension and pick up nuances I missed before. Over time, this method helped me recognize words effortlessly, improve my pronunciation, and gain confidence in speaking English naturally. I used two types of listening, each playing a crucial role in my language acquisition journey. Understanding and implementing both methods properly gave me an edge in learning English efficiently. Passive listening allowed me to absorb the rhythm and flow of the language effortlessly, while active listening ensured that I paid close attention to pronunciation, intonation, and word usage. By combining both methods, I trained my ears to recognize words and phrases naturally. I also engaged in immersive listening exercises such as transcribing audio clips, listening to different accents, and mimicking native speakers. This holistic approach accelerated my progress and made me more confident in understanding spoken English in various contexts, from casual conversations to formal discussions. Passive listening, playing English audio while cleaning, commuting, or even exercising helped me absorb the language effortlessly. I made a habit of keeping English content playing in the background, be it podcasts, audiobooks, or even interviews with native speakers. Over time, this passive exposure helped me familiarize myself with different accents, speech patterns, and commonly used phrases. It also trained my ears to pick up on subtle pronunciation differences and intonations, making it easier to understand spoken English in real-life scenarios. Additionally, I started repeating words and sentences I heard, even if I wasn't actively studying, which further reinforced my learning. Active listening. I focused on picking up new words and phrases, repeating them out loud, and trying to use them in conversations. To strengthen my listening skills, I started using an intentional approach. I would listen to English content with subtitles first, take notes on unfamiliar words, and then listen again without subtitles to reinforce my understanding. I also practiced dictation exercises, where I would write down exactly what I heard to improve both comprehension and spelling. Another effective method was engaging with interactive content, such as TED Talks and YouTube videos, where I could pause and repeat phrases to mirror the speaker's pronunciation. This immersive technique helped me not only understand English better, but also feel more confident in my speaking abilities. Speaking English was my biggest fear. I remember countless moments of hesitation, my heart pounding whenever I had to introduce myself or participate in a conversation. I would rehearse sentences in my head, yet when the moment came, my mind would go blank. I felt nervous, afraid of making mistakes, and deeply self-conscious about my accent. It felt like every syllable I uttered was being scrutinized. But then I realized that the only way to improve was to push past the fear and speak as much as possible. I forced myself into conversations, no matter how uncomfortable it was. Whether ordering food in English, asking for directions, or engaging in small talk, I took every opportunity to use the language. Over time, those shaky conversations turned into confident discussions, and I saw myself improving each day. I stopped fearing mistakes and started seeing them as learning opportunities. Instead of letting embarrassment hold me back, I embraced errors as stepping stones to fluency. Every time I stumbled over a word or misused a phrase, I made a note of it, corrected myself, and tried again. I realized that native speakers rarely focus on small errors made by learners. They appreciate the effort. By continuously putting myself in situations where I had to speak, whether in a casual conversation or a structured language exchange, I gradually built my confidence. The more I spoke, the better I became, and the fear of mistakes eventually disappeared. I found friends online who also wanted to improve their English. We formed a small study group where we practiced every day, correcting each other and building confidence together. We used video calls, messaging apps, and online forums to engage in conversations and share resources. Sometimes we played word games, role-played real-life scenarios, and even challenged each other with storytelling exercises. Additionally, we created a weekly challenge where each of us would prepare a short presentation on a random topic and present it in English. This exercise not only improved our fluency but also built our ability to think and respond in English spontaneously. We also set goals for ourselves, whether it was learning 10 new words a week or mastering a particular grammar rule, and held each other accountable. These interactive sessions made learning fun and significantly improved our speaking fluency. Having a supportive group kept us motivated, and we celebrated each milestone together, making the journey of learning English more enjoyable and fulfilling. Over time, we noticed incredible progress, and some of us even went on to participate in public speaking events or language exchange meetups, gaining real-world experience in English communication. I listened to native speakers and repeated their words immediately, mimicking their pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. This technique, known as shadowing, allowed me to refine my accent and develop a more natural flow in my speech. At first, I struggled to keep up, but over time, my ability to mimic native pronunciation improved significantly. I practiced with podcasts, audiobooks, and even movie dialogues, pausing and repeating each sentence until I felt comfortable. I also took it a step further by recording myself and comparing my pronunciation with that of native speakers. By breaking down challenging words and focusing on subtle details like stress patterns and intonation shifts, I was able to make my speech more fluid and natural. Additionally, I made use of pronunciation apps and interactive speaking tools to refine my articulation. By doing this regularly, I gained confidence, expanded my vocabulary, and internalized natural speech patterns, making my English sound more authentic and fluent. Over time, I found myself thinking in English more often, reducing the need to translate from my native language, which greatly enhanced my fluency and spontaneity in conversations. Reading English books was a game changer for me. It not only expanded my vocabulary and helped me understand sentence structures naturally, but also introduced me to different writing styles and ways of thinking. Each book I read gave me new perspectives and allowed me to see how language is used in various contexts. By engaging with diverse genres, fiction, self-improvement, history, and even poetry, I was able to improve my comprehension skills, recognize common idioms, and develop a richer sense of expression. I made it a habit to summarize each chapter in my own words, reinforcing my understanding and ensuring that I retained new words and concepts. I also kept a dedicated vocabulary journal, writing down unfamiliar words along with their meanings and usage examples, which I would review daily. The more I read, the more I felt my confidence in using English grow, as I could apply what I learned in both writing and speaking. Additionally, I joined book discussion groups where I could analyze themes, discuss interpretations, and articulate my thoughts in English, further solidifying my language skills. The combination of reading, summarizing, vocabulary building, and discussing books accelerated my learning and made the process both enjoyable and highly effective. I started with children's books and short stories with pictures to aid comprehension. These books provided me with visual cues that helped reinforce meaning and improve my understanding. I took my time reading each page, pronouncing words carefully, and even rereading sentences to ensure comprehension. I made it a habit to underline unfamiliar words and look them up, writing their definitions in a dedicated vocabulary journal. Gradually, I moved on to novels and articles, selecting texts that matched my interests. I chose mystery novels to stay engaged, self-improvement books to expand my mindset, and newspaper articles to stay informed while learning formal writing structures. To deepen my comprehension, I started summarizing chapters in my own words, discussing books with others, and writing reviews. Additionally, I created mind maps and visual diagrams to connect key ideas and reinforce retention. I also read bilingual books, comparing translations to understand subtle differences in language use. To challenge myself further, I participated in online book clubs and forums, exchanging insights with fellow learners and native speakers. Over time, I incorporated note-taking strategies like the Cornell method and highlighting techniques to absorb information more efficiently. This systematic approach made reading a powerful tool for expanding my English proficiency and critical thinking skills. As my reading ability improved, I challenged myself with classic literature, philosophical texts, and contemporary essays, which exposed me to more complex sentence structures and advanced vocabulary. I diversified my reading materials to include academic journals, biographies, and technical manuals to gain a deeper understanding of specialized vocabulary and sentence structures. I read aloud to practice pronunciation and intonation, sometimes recording myself and playing it back to assess my fluency. To reinforce my learning, I wrote summaries and reflections on the books I read, helping me articulate my thoughts more clearly in English. I also tried speed reading exercises to improve my reading efficiency and comprehension, gradually increasing my ability to absorb and retain information more quickly. This gradual transition made reading not only a learning tool but also an enjoyable habit that expanded my worldview, deepened my critical thinking skills, and made English feel like a natural part of my life. Additionally, I began engaging in literary discussions, both online and offline, to exchange interpretations and insights, further strengthening my ability to express complex ideas in English. Reading out loud improved my pronunciation and confidence. I recorded myself and listened back to find areas for improvement. I also practiced emphasizing different syllables and mimicking native speakers' intonation to make my speech sound more natural. To make it even more effective, I read aloud different types of texts, such as news articles, poetry, and dialogues, which exposed me to various styles of expression. I experimented with reading in different accents and tones, challenging myself to adopt the natural rhythm and flow of native speakers. Additionally, I participated in online reading groups, where I could receive feedback on my pronunciation and clarity. I noticed that over time, my fluency improved significantly, and I became more comfortable speaking in real-life conversations. Reading aloud also helped me develop a stronger ear for the language, allowing me to recognize patterns in spoken English and react more naturally in conversations. It was not just a reading exercise but a transformative tool that bridged the gap between written words and spoken fluency. Writing became my secret weapon in mastering English. It not only helped me organize my thoughts and express myself clearly, but it also strengthened my ability to structure complex ideas, improve my grammar, and expand my vocabulary. I began with simple journal entries, writing about my daily routine, thoughts, and experiences. Over time, I experimented with different styles, essays, opinion pieces, and even short fictional stories, challenging myself to apply newly learned vocabulary and grammatical structures. I also engaged in creative writing exercises, such as rewriting famous stories with my own twists and composing letters to imaginary friends, which made the process enjoyable. The process of writing allowed me to experiment with different sentence structures and word choices, making my communication more precise and impactful. Over time, I discovered that consistent writing practice led to greater confidence in both my spoken and written English, allowing me to articulate my ideas fluently in any situation. I also practiced summarizing articles and books in my own words, reinforcing comprehension and retention while expanding my ability to express complex ideas. Eventually, I reached a point where writing became second nature, serving as both a practical skill and a creative outlet. I wrote about my daily experiences in English. At first, my sentences were short and simple, often consisting of just a few words or basic phrases. However, as I continued writing every day, I began to incorporate more descriptive language, varied sentence structures, and newly learned vocabulary. I challenged myself to write longer journal entries, detailing my thoughts, feelings, and reflections on different events. To push myself further, I experimented with storytelling techniques, describing past experiences as if they were narratives, adding dialogue, sensory details, and emotional depth to enhance engagement. I also explored different styles of writing, persuasive essays, opinion pieces, and reflective journals, to expand my ability to communicate in various contexts. I experimented with creative writing, crafting fictional dialogues, and attempting free writing sessions where I let my thoughts flow uninterrupted for a set period. I set writing challenges for myself, such as summarizing an article in 100 words, writing a poem in English, drafting a letter to my future self, and composing short analytical essays on various topics. Additionally, I engaged in structured debates by writing arguments for and against a topic, improving my ability to present well-reasoned thoughts. These exercises helped me gain fluency, build logical reasoning skills, and develop a deeper understanding of English as a tool for self-expression and effective communication. Furthermore, I found that reading my journal entries allowed me to identify awkward phrasing and refine my writing style. I even started translating sections of my entries into my native language and back into English to ensure I grasped the nuances of both languages. Additionally, I practiced paraphrasing passages in different ways to strengthen my ability to reframe ideas using varied sentence structures and vocabulary. I experimented with different tones and styles, formal, casual, and academic, adapting my writing to different contexts. Over time, my writing not only became more complex and natural, but it also started to flow effortlessly, mirroring the way I thought in English. I noticed that my ability to express emotions, abstract ideas, and even humor improved, making my writing more engaging and dynamic. This process helped me develop greater confidence in expressing myself both in written and spoken conversations, reinforcing the connection between writing and overall language fluency, and ultimately bridging the gap between thought and articulation. I challenged myself to create fictional stories, weaving together intricate plots and dynamic characters while incorporating new words and phrases I had learned. I explored different genres, from mystery to science fiction, allowing me to experiment with varied writing styles and tones. To further enhance my learning, I wrote short dialogues and descriptive scenes, focusing on making my storytelling more vivid and engaging. I also began analyzing storytelling techniques used by famous authors, adopting elements of suspense, humor, and emotional depth to elevate my writing. Additionally, I created a habit of rewriting the same story from different perspectives, such as first person, third person, and even as a diary entry, which helped me understand the nuances of narrative voice. Over time, this practice not only enriched my vocabulary but also sharpened my ability to think creatively in English. I found that my ability to articulate thoughts in real-life conversations improved as I became more adept at structuring complex ideas through writing. I used tools like Grammarly to check my mistakes and improve my writing skills. Additionally, I explored other resources such as Hemingway Editor to refine readability, Pro Writing Aid for in-depth grammar analysis, and Google Docs built-in suggestions for collaborative editing. I also participated in online writing forums where native speakers and experienced learners provided constructive feedback on my writing. To further enhance my writing, I took online writing courses that focused on structuring essays, storytelling techniques, and business communication. I engaged in daily writing exercises, such as composing short stories, summaries, and blog posts, to strengthen my ability to convey ideas effectively. By combining these tools with consistent practice, I significantly improved my writing clarity, coherence, and overall command of English. Over time, I developed a habit of proofreading my work meticulously, making revisions based on feedback, and experimenting with different writing styles to sharpen my skills further. One of the biggest breakthroughs in my learning journey was training myself to think in English instead of translating from my native language. At first, it was a challenge. I constantly found myself mentally converting words and phrases before speaking. This slowed me down and made conversations feel unnatural. To break this habit, I started by immersing myself in English in every possible way. I read books and articles directly in English, forcing myself to infer meaning from context rather than relying on translations. I also started describing my daily activities in English, narrating my thoughts internally as if I were speaking to someone. To make the transition smoother, I practiced thinking in English by setting small daily goals. For example, I would challenge myself to think in English for 30 minutes at a time, gradually increasing the duration until it became second nature. I also maintained an English-only notebook where I wrote down thoughts, ideas, and even to-do lists in English, reinforcing my ability to structure sentences naturally. Additionally, I engaged in imaginary conversations, pretending I was discussing different topics with a native speaker. This technique helped me articulate my thoughts more fluidly and improved my spontaneous speech. Gradually, these exercises helped me form sentences more quickly and naturally. I even practiced responding to common questions in English spontaneously, which strengthened my ability to think directly in the language. Over time, I noticed a significant improvement in my fluency, as I no longer needed to pause and translate before speaking. My confidence grew, and I became more comfortable expressing my thoughts without hesitation. Eventually, thinking in English became as effortless as speaking my native language, and I could engage in discussions without overanalyzing my words. This shift was a game changer in my language learning journey, allowing me to interact more authentically and confidently in any setting. I put English labels on objects in my house to reinforce vocabulary, making sure to include both the word and a simple sentence using it. For example, on my fridge, I wrote refrigerator. I store food in the refrigerator. This helped me learn vocabulary in context and reinforced my ability to use these words naturally in conversations. To further enhance my learning, I changed the labels every week with new words and phrases related to household items, ensuring continuous exposure to fresh vocabulary. Additionally, I practiced using these words in spoken sentences throughout my day, making language acquisition more practical and dynamic. To push my learning even further, I created a vocabulary wall where I added thematic word clusters, linking related words and phrases together. For instance, in the kitchen, I labeled not just refrigerator, but also oven. I bake cookies in the oven, microwave, I heat my meals in the microwave, and sink, I wash dishes in the sink. This way, I associated words with their functions and environments, reinforcing their meanings. I also started setting daily challenges for myself, such as using 5 newly labeled words in a sentence before lunchtime. To make the process interactive, I invited friends and family members to test me by pointing at an object and having me say its English name and use it in a meaningful sentence. Over time, this technique significantly improved my ability to recall and use new words effortlessly in conversations. I put English labels on objects in my house to reinforce vocabulary, making sure to include both the word and a simple sentence using it. For example, on my fridge, I wrote refrigerator. I store food in the refrigerator. This helped me learn vocabulary in context and reinforced my ability to use these words naturally in conversations. To further enhance my learning, I changed the labels every week with new words and phrases related to household items, ensuring continuous exposure to fresh vocabulary. Additionally, I practiced using these words in spoken sentences throughout my day, making language acquisition more practical and dynamic. To push my learning even further, I created a vocabulary wall where I added thematic word clusters, linking related words and phrases together. For instance, in the kitchen, I labeled not just refrigerator, but also oven. I bake cookies in the oven, microwave, I heat my meals in the microwave, and sink, I wash dishes in the sink. This way, I associated words with their functions and environments, reinforcing their meanings. I also started setting daily challenges for myself, such as using 5 newly labeled words in a sentence before lunchtime. To make the process interactive, I invited friends and family members to test me by pointing at an object and having me say its English name and use it in a meaningful sentence. Over time, this technique significantly improved my ability to recall and use new words effortlessly in conversations. Throughout the day, I would think in English, describing what I was doing, planning my day, and even talking to myself in English. I mentally narrated my actions, such as I am making breakfast now, or I need to finish this task before noon. I also asked myself questions in English, like "What should I do next?" and then answered them as if having a conversation with another person. To reinforce this habit, I set specific times for English-only thinking, such as my morning routine, cooking, or evening walks. I also expanded my internal dialogues by practicing storytelling, where I recounted my day as if narrating it to an audience. Additionally, I created imaginary discussions, debating different sides of an argument to improve my ability to think critically in English. I practiced hypothetical scenarios, such as imagining how I would explain a concept to a friend, how I would present an idea in a meeting, or how I would respond to an unexpected question in an interview. To make these exercises more engaging, I sometimes recorded my thoughts and played them back to identify areas for improvement. These internal conversations helped me develop fluency, increase my ability to think spontaneously in English, and significantly reduce my hesitation when speaking aloud. Over time, this practice became second nature, and I found myself naturally processing thoughts in English without any conscious effort, making my spoken conversations more fluid and effortless. I used Duolingo for vocabulary, Anki for flashcards, and HelloTalk to chat with native speakers. Additionally, I explored Memrise for interactive learning, BBC Learning English for structured lessons, and Tandem for one-on-one language exchange. I also experimented with LingQ for reading comprehension, SpeechLing for pronunciation practice, and italki for professional tutoring sessions. To make my learning more interactive, I engaged with AI-powered chatbots that simulated real-life conversations, allowing me to practice dialogue scenarios in different contexts. Furthermore, I utilized language-focused Discord communities and Reddit forums to engage in discussions with other learners and native speakers. I also made use of interactive story-based learning apps like Bilinguapp, which allowed me to read texts in English while following along in my native language. Another essential tool was podcasts tailored for language learners, where I could listen at different speeds and focus on real-world conversations. By diversifying my use of technology and integrating multiple platforms, I reinforced vocabulary retention, pronunciation, real-time conversational skills, listening comprehension, and overall fluency more effectively. I watched English-speaking YouTubers and TED Talks, focusing on how they structured their sentences and conveyed ideas. I paid close attention to their use of transitions, tone modulation, and body language, which helped me understand how to make my speech more engaging and natural. I also took notes on commonly used phrases and expressions, pausing the videos to repeat sentences aloud and mimic their pronunciation. Additionally, I challenged myself by summarizing the key points of each video in my own words, reinforcing my comprehension and speaking ability. Over time, this practice not only improved my listening skills but also enhanced my confidence in expressing ideas clearly and persuasively. I switched my phone and apps to English, forcing myself to interact with the language daily. Every time I checked notifications, set reminders, or used social media, I was engaging with English in a natural way. I also changed the language settings on my computer, streaming platforms, and even my GPS, ensuring constant exposure. Additionally, I customized my news feed to display articles in English, subscribed to English-speaking blogs, and set my virtual assistant to respond only in English. This immersive approach helped me pick up new phrases, improve my reading comprehension, and develop a habit of thinking in English effortlessly. Over time, I found that I was no longer translating words in my head but directly processing information in English, making my interactions with the language more fluid and instinctive. I learned that perfection is the enemy of progress. Making mistakes is not just part of learning, it is the very foundation of improvement. Every mistake provided me with a valuable lesson, helping me recognize gaps in my understanding and reinforcing the importance of continuous practice. Instead of fearing errors, I embraced them as opportunities for growth, gradually building confidence in my ability to communicate in English without hesitation. I began actively seeking constructive criticism from native speakers and language partners, treating every correction as a stepping stone toward improvement. I also kept a mistake journal, where I recorded errors I made in conversations, along with their corrected versions, which allowed me to track my progress and avoid repeating the same mistakes. Over time, I started to view mistakes not as failures but as proof that I was pushing my limits and actively learning. This shift in mindset freed me from the pressure of perfection and made my language learning journey much more enjoyable and effective. Dedicating even just 20 to 30 minutes a day to studying English consistently is far more effective than cramming for hours occasionally. Daily exposure helps reinforce vocabulary, improve pronunciation, and build confidence gradually, making learning a natural part of life rather than a stressful obligation. I developed a structured daily routine that included listening to a podcast while commuting, reading a few pages of an English book before bed, and setting aside time to write a short journal entry or engage in a brief conversation with a language partner. By incorporating English into different parts of my day, I made sure that learning became effortless and enjoyable. Additionally, I tracked my progress using a language learning app, which helped me stay motivated and recognize how much I was improving over time. I stopped obsessing over perfect grammar and focused on expressing myself clearly, prioritizing fluency and confidence in communication over grammatical perfection. I realized that native speakers often make mistakes too, yet they communicate effortlessly because they focus on conveying their message rather than aiming for 100% accuracy. Instead of hesitating due to grammar concerns, I learned to embrace natural conversation flow, using context and body language to support my speech. Over time, I found that as I gained more confidence in speaking, my grammar naturally improved through constant exposure and practice. Learning English is not about memorizing rules, it's about enjoying the process. The more I surrounded myself with the language, the more natural it became.
Final words of advice.
1. Stay motivated and celebrate small wins. 2. Immerse yourself in English daily through listening, speaking, reading, and writing. 3. Find joy in learning. It's not just about the destination but the journey itself. By following these steps, I went from a beginner who was afraid to speak to someone who now communicates fluently in English. And if I can do it, so can you. What's your story? How are you learning English? Share in the comments below.